And so we spend so long waiting for the courage to show up. It won't show up. I'm going to burst your bubble right now. It will not just show up. You build it. It's a muscle, right? You build it because you use it and you try it. But the only way to get to courage is through vulnerability. It's the only way. And vulnerability is allowing yourself to be seen.
Hello, dear listeners. It's that time again when we stroll through the paths of ambition, desire, and success. Welcome to the Dare to Declare podcast, where we explore the enchanting world of giant manifestors who've turned their visions and goals into the stuff of legends. I couldn't help but wonder, how do some people create the lives they've always dreamed of? Is it the magic of manifesting, the power of perseverance, or perhaps just a dash of serendipity? Well, dear friends, grab your coffee cups because we're about to spill the tea on fascinating journeys of those who dare to dream big and make it happen. Join me as we sip on success stories and ponder the ever-enticing question, can we all manifest our dreams into reality, or is it just an urban fairy tale? I'm your host, Debbi Sleuth, and I'm here to guide you through the labyrinth of achievement with heart and soul. Ready to dare to declare? Let's get started. Hello, so today we have an amazing guest. It's Marsha Vanwynsberghe, and she is an LLP trainer, author, speaker, podcaster, and boutique publisher. She's the author of When She Stopped Asking Why, a 6-time best-selling book in which she shares her story as a parent navigating teen substance abuse. That chapter became the catalyst for her purpose-driven business. Marsha teaches the tools of radical responsibility, subconscious reprogramming, and storytelling to help others own their voice and message. She believes our stories connect us, and when we own them, we unlock our power. Through her podcast, coaching programs, and outspoken NLP certification, she empowers others to become outspoken global thought leaders who speak, write, publish, and lead with impact. Today's talk, you're going to hear really vulnerable shares that Marsha talks about some of her challenges she had in her 20s and 30s, even before her book around why she stopped asking why, and what really led to her being so outspoken, advocating, and how she followed her intuition and how she continues to help others follow theirs. Sit back, grab a glass of water, pen and paper, because she's dropping a lot of really beautiful golden nuggets today, and enjoy. I am so excited. This is my new acquaintance, new friend, Marsha Vanwynsberghe, and she is an amazing, accomplished author. And I'm really excited to dive into her book and her purpose, her mission today, because whether you've had her situation in your family or not, I know you're going to be able to pull parts and bits of her story into your own life and make that application. So welcome, Marsha.
No, thank you so much, Debbi. I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. Well, tell us a bit about where you were in, let's say, in your 20s and 30s, and so some of the evolution to where you are today. And we'll pull it apart, but just give us the overview, like the balcony view of you and your work, your family, and so forth.
So in my 20s and 30s, I was that perfectionist who worked super, super hard. I had armor all around me, like the kind of armor that was, if somebody stopped and said, "You're so strong," I just took that as like a badge of honor. And asking for help was something I would never even consider doing, because that was what weak people did. And I look back at that version of me, and I honor her because she did help me through some really, really challenging times. I was able to be the first in my family to go to university, the first in my family to do so many things, that I took that as a badge of honor, that I really closed off so much. And yet I thought I had, these great relationships and these great friendships, but no one ever really knew me because I let them see what I wanted them to see. And so that was a big piece of me. And that was my 20s and my 30s. And in my early 30s, I was really struggling with, I don't share this too often, but you went here, is this, in my 30s, I had multiple miscarriages. I had what was called a partial molar pregnancy. And I didn't even know what that was, but they thought it was a mass, and it started as a baby and it became a mass. And I ended up having to go through 2 years of really intense testing. And it was a major shift that happened for me. So for the next, 6 years, I ended up going through, I think, 7 surgeries, a lot of challenges, and by the time I was 38, I had this very intuitive download knowing that you need to have a hysterectomy. And I remember fighting with my OB saying, "I need this. This is something is wrong. Like, something is actually really wrong." I did have a very aggressive endometriosis, but, go back 16, 17 years, nobody talked about those things. So I had nothing to really back me up. And he and I had a great relationship, and I fought so hard to have this hysterectomy done because I knew there was something wrong. And even to the point that he put me under, he said, "You were not taking your ovaries." And I said, "You're going to have to. I think there's something wrong." And when I came to, he looked at me, and he said, "How did you know?" And I said, I did know. I right?" And he's like, "I'm not sure you would have seen 40." That's how aggressive it was. It wasn't cancerous, but the way the cells were moving, he said, I had no doubt that's the direction it was going. So, I learned from an age, I think I started to really get curious about my intuition and the message and pieces like this. And so that led me into my 30s and 40s. And then all of a sudden here I was in my 40s, we were parents dealing with teen substance abuse. And it was like, where in the world did this come from? Like, you think you have those bingo cards laid out. You're like, this is somebody, and I've had somebody say that to me, that this is like, if you do all the right things as a parent, this is how it turns out. And I'm like, oh, honey, I want to actually just tell you, yeah, I think you and I have had this conversations. That's not how it works. It's actually, you can do everything perfectly and things can still go a different path. I do believe we're all here on our own soul's journey. I do. And so if I really believe that, then I believe my kids had to be at the same time too. And so it led me down a path that I became this advocate, this fighter. I started to share my story as a parent. That led to books and podcasts and speaking engagements and a business that I didn't know I was creating. And so I know that was a little bit of a longer story, but I just wanted to share like I can look back at it now and it makes sense how the dots connected at the time that it didn't make any sense.
Right, right. So just going back to the trauma that you had. So what you're saying is that this mass within you was there for 2 years?
So the mass, what happened is I ended up, it started as a pregnancy. I was pregnant.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
My kids were like 3 and 4 at the time. And I think we'd had our ultrasound, everything was fine. And then we got to about the I think it was about the 20-week mark, 22-week mark. And I collapsed at work. And I was like, something doesn't feel right. And I went in to test and they said, okay, there's no heartbeat. Now we'd already had multiple miscarriages, so that was not a new thing. And they did the D&C, and when they did that, they came in and said, no, this actually was a mass. And we now have to go through, we had to do this testing every month where it was, what's your hormone level? And if there was any question, they would have to go in because they were shocked it wasn't cancerous because of the size of it. And so every month I had to be tested, and it was this very scary time. What's interesting, I'm just connecting a little bit of a dot that I had to really work on my own headspace there because it was very easy to go down the path of like, this is cancer and I'm dying. That was it. And even my husband was like, what do we have to do? Like, she's 32 years old. This something is not right. But I had to really shift it and be like, okay, we're gonna for every month, like I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy. And I believed it, but that was a very early part of my mindset work that I had to go through. So no, it wasn't, the mass wasn't there for 2 years, but I had to go through monthly testing and blood testing and an OB appointment every month for 24 months. And that was a real mindset challenge.
Yeah, I just don't want to step over that in terms of your story because there's so much there. And I know I had a miscarriage, and it's one of those silent things that women carry, especially women my age. And,
Mhm.
because it really wasn't talked about, it was almost like
You can say it.
it was like a secret and it was almost shameful. I don't know. It was odd. And I was grieving in silence, for the baby that could have been. But then compound that with the big C word, cancer, and knowing that you've got two littles at home. That's just an extraordinary journey that you've been on at an early
It's
age.
Yeah, it was very, as you said it, there was a lot of shame. I didn't understand shame then. We didn't talk about that 20 years ago. Didn't even know what it was. And I remember being at a family dinner and an aunt said, "I really don't understand the big deal with a miscarriage. It's not like you ever got to meet them."
I
And
had the same thing said to me. It's just,
I just sat there and I said, "You know what?" I said, "Have you ever had one?" And
mm,
she said, "No." And I said, "It shows."
good
It
for you.
shows. That was my answer. And so I laugh a little bit because I have been an advocate about the topics that people don't want to talk about.
Mm.
So honestly, I will tell you that every year, on August 18th, which would have been her birthday, it was a girl.
Oh,
I have a moment and I celebrate it and I have a beautiful writing that I do with it. I also believe that she came to me because she saved my life. Like, if I hadn't had the miscarriage at 32, if I hadn't gone through all the testing, I wouldn't have known that I had this aggressive endometriosis that was a borderline worrisome for cancer, and having hysterectomy at 38, it would have never happened. And so I actually got to a point where I celebrate her birthday and I honor that she came to me for a reason, and I think she saved my life. And so I don't take that lightly. And that's something that, as life then started to unfold and we dealt with what we did, it was like, okay, apparently I had some big things to step into, and that's how I see it. So I know that seems very strange for some people, but I had to flip that in my head, and I do believe that she came to me for a reason.
yeah. No, I 100% believe that as well. And the further evidence of that is your intuition and knowing and standing up for yourself, and like your company, like you're outspoken, right? And so and it's interesting, my company is Dare to Declare, and so I think there's some sisterhood here around our messaging for others, that we declare, we speak out for ourselves and for others. And you know so just trusting your intuition. And I imagine that the confidence is built when you take that risk. And you took the risk for standing up to a physician, where I'm a rule follower. So when a physician says something, it's pretty much, like God speaking. And so it's challenging to really get the confidence to stand up for yourself. Like I applaud you for that.
Thank you. It is something that, that fighter, I go back to the fighter who had the armor, who was like like really just fought and was the advocate. She saved my life many times over. Like, that's actually, I honor her. I really do. I honor that part of myself. I just don't live in that energy full time anymore because it's exhausting. But I did. And, back, and then that endometriosis, just because I don't share this story too often, but that endometriosis was something that was very aggressive. So when they did do the hysterectomy, he said, at that point, it was through my spine, it was through my bowels, it was up to my diaphragm. It was very, very aggressive.
Wow.
And so that then led to two more surgeries post hysterectomy, where, sorry for anybody's, but I was bleeding again. So imagine having a full hysterectomy and all of a sudden you start bleeding again. It's like, what is happening?
Mhm.
So I've had two surgeries post hysterectomy where it was aggressive. And then in 2019, I started to have these very strange, like, numb feelings that didn't make sense. And I mean, I spent 27 years in physical rehab work. So I mean, I know the body. I mean, something is wrong. And so, long story short, there, intuition wise, I went to my doctor and she's like, "Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine." And I'm like, "No, I actually really think something is wrong." And I had a friend who was a chiropractor and she's like, "We can do an x-ray. I agree with you. I think there's something there." And so we did the x-ray. And I remember when she called me to come in and she was crying and she's like, "You need to get seen ASAP." And I didn't understand it at the time. But then, of course, it was 2020. And I was put off many times, my MRI was, because it was 2020 and things were shut down. And it actually ended up having my MRI. It was in August of that year. And I had it on a Friday, and by Saturday morning, the hospital was calling and saying, you need to be here ASAP. And I went in, and the doctor looked at me and said, why would you leave this long? This is actually, you're going to lose the ability to walk. And I'm like, this is my fault. Like, you guys have canceled them 4 times. This is not me. And she became my best advocate, and I ended up having an emergency back surgery. There is no medical reason, nothing happened. I didn't injure myself, except that the surgeon said, I believe that endometrial tissue was in your spine. It literally pulled your spine apart, is what it did. That's how aggressive it was. So I have a full spine full of titanium right now. And it's been, I mean, really, when I look back, I've been an advocate in so many ways in my life, and using my voice and that confidence. Like, it's shaky when you have to speak to an expert, and you have to, be able to fight for yourself. But there's also no one's going to do it for you if you don't. No one is going to do it if you don't. They actually really hope that you just stay quiet.
And just the listener just catches that for a moment. Can you just repeat that and write that down?
Yeah, no one will be an advocate for you if you don't. And in any way, shape, or form, whatever your story is. And there's ways to do it respectfully. And I mean, I was not disrespectful in the hospital, but I'll tell you, she became my biggest advocate, and she made things happen really fast. Like, I saw a surgeon within days in 2020 and was put on the emergency list. And as soon as the list opened up, he said it takes about a month to prep you for the surgery, but it's 2020, everything's unpredictable. He said, so as soon as you are cleared and we call you, you have to say yes. And I remember saying to him, okay, but what exercises could I do to get better? And he's like, none. Like, you're going to lose your ability to walk. And I'm like, oh, it's that bad. Like, I had no idea it was that bad. And so that then led to an emergency surgery in the hospital where I had to learn how to walk again. That was where I signed up for my first NLP, neurolinguistic programming. Yeah. That is in the hospital, was when I did, because I was like learning how to walk again.
Wow. So, this podcast is about major manifestors, and sometimes it's about monetary things and, wealth and business. And you've had that as well. But, I love this talking about manifesting your health.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no wealth without your health. I mean, and so you are now standing on stages. I saw you were walking around women conferences, like, just, I hesitate to use the word miracle, because I feel like miracle is something that's beyond science, but it feels like a miracle what you're talking about, where you took the action, it was inspired action, you advocated, you found others that were then in your team, who could also stand with you shoulder to shoulder, and who believed in you. But that's because you believed in yourself first.
Yes, you nailed that. This is I just love this conversation. I don't think I've had anybody as a host take me in this direction. And I think it's a powerful part of my backstory, because many people, no pun there, but of my backstory, because sometimes people you'll look at somebody who speaks on stages, who has a podcast, who has written multiple books, and you might be seeing them in like chapter 25 or chapter 50 of their book. You have no idea all the things that they walk through, and it looks like they have something that you don't. And that's not true. That's not ever true. I think that everybody is capable of creating change in their life. I 100% believe that. I believe that anybody can create what they want. And I actually think we're all incredibly powerful manifestors. It's just that we're not manifesting what we want. We're manifesting what we don't want, because we're speaking life into what we don't want.
For sure. I mean, people think about manifestation always, in the positive, and that's great, but we are manifesting all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about shame. So you talk about shame in terms of, and bless her heart, as they'd say in the South, right? Like, but they say it with a bit of a tongue in cheek, like, bless her heart, and even people that have advice about children, and often they don't have any themselves, like, they're the ones who are, giving you advice around those bingo card things. So you experienced shame, and you were saying this around the miscarriage. You have experienced shame around teen substance abuse within your family. And one of the first quotes in your book is from Brené Brown. And that's her whole life's work is around vulnerability and shame. Can you tell me a bit about, so NLP came into your life, but how did Brené Brown and her work and this idea of addressing shame face on and saying and being outspoken about it?
I am beyond grateful for Brene Brown's work, to be completely honest. That came, I'm going to say probably 12, 13 years ago when our story really started. And I stumbled onto her work. If I think back to that time, I was doing counseling. I was trying to find support groups. I'm the person who turns over every rock, right? That's just who I am. And I was into the YouTube videos. I was trying to find answers. Now, in the world outside of my house, the armor was really strong. Like, people could not crack that. I did not share a lot of what was happening. And when I did, it really, I know my story scared a lot of people. So we were very isolated at that time. And so I found Brené Brown's work, and I remember hearing the first time, listening to it on YouTube, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, vulnerabilities, what? Like, I just had this moment of like, it's like I heard the word for the very first time. And for me, I was like, okay, it's strength. Okay, so if I want to get to feel this, she speaks about, we think that we have to have the courage to do something. And so we spend so long waiting for the courage to show up. It won't show up. I'm going to burst your bubble right now. It will not just show up. You build it. It's a muscle, right? You build it because you use it and you try it. But the only way to get to courage is through vulnerability. It's the only way. And vulnerability is allowing yourself to be seen. And I know that's scary. And I believe it's the most beautiful gift ever, personally, because I find that when we're in a space of being vulnerable, that's when you actually build your best connections with people. Because if you think about your best connections to people that, you would drop everything and go help and support, etc., you built that relationship out of mess. You didn't build it out of your most prettiest day ever. You built it out of like the messy times. And so that was understanding the vulnerability piece. Shame was a bigger light bulb than vulnerability, because shame, understanding it, I grew up in a time, I was born in the 70s. We certainly didn't talk about anything there. Like, and you just shoved that right down and you built that armor. So, I mean, underneath that layer of perfectionism and the armor that I had was so much shame that I didn't understand it. And shame is something that grows when there's silence. So if you grow up in a culture where we don't talk about anything, shame is like this, like I don't know how to, I just picture it as this like little devilish thing that is like, oh great, like I'm growing. It's like an awful weed that has so deep in the roots. And so shame is something that, and it's a slippery slope for me. It will show up and I see it and I'm like, oh, when I see that, that's the moment you'll see me jump onto my stories and share something really open and vulnerable, because I'm like, nope, you're not getting me. It's not how this works. I really want you to know, like, shame has power because you give it power, not because it takes from you. You actually give it power because you don't use your voice. And so I have worked with people for the last, 12 plus years in sharing vulnerable stories and teaching them how to shift the shame story and not be in the story and learn how to stand on the story. And that's what I started to do. So my very first time that I spoke and shared my story was at a high school. And I had a beautiful relationship with the teachers at the school and the guidance counselors. They knew like that it was bad. And they had us come in and speak to other parents because they're like, we don't know what to say. And when I did that the very first time, I remember thinking, I feel like this is going to be something, but I didn't know what intuitively. And I just kept following it. And all of a sudden I did another small talk. And then I did a small talk on a stage. And then the stage got bigger. And what would happen is every time I would speak, especially those first few talks, I was bombarded, is an understatement, with people who would come to me and say, that was my story and I've never told a soul. And here they are in their 60s and 70s. I'm like, what the heck is happening? Like, that we have people who are hiding parts of themselves for decades because of so much shame. And then it was like, it just gave me fuel. Like it helped me to heal. I didn't know that was going to happen. It gave me fuel to get louder about it. And that's a big part of what I do. Like the people that I help with their stories, and whether it's publishing them or learning how to speak about them, they're the kind of stories that most people don't want to touch. I love them. I'm like, this is the work that I know I'm here to do. And because when you learn how to shift that shame, you will find your purpose. I promise you, you'll find your people, you'll find your purpose. And if we get to a point that we have found our way through our stories, I didn't say the story's fixed, right? I didn't say it's done. I didn't say it's over, but you find a way through your story and you find a way to navigate your story. Why not pass that on to somebody else? Why not help somebody else? Honestly, it gave a purpose to such a messy time in my life that it saved me. I have no doubt whatsoever. It actually saved me.
Mm. So I'm curious what the formula is to go from sharing your vulnerable story and being in it to being on it. And the reason I'm asking is because, like you, I shared my story a few years ago, probably about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, for the first time around my sexual abuse by my grandfather.
Mhm.
And I was in a women's group. Unfortunately, it was at a brewery, which is very masculine. But what the women did, they circled me. It was a simple
Oh,
thing. It was so beautiful.
yes.
And I had the epiphany for the first time during when I was speaking. I had a prepared talk, but I went. It was like an out of body kind of experience talking about it. I had a few slides of me as well as a child, just to give it context. But what I said was, for most of my life, I've been like this. So people that can't see me, I have my fists um, closed and raised.
I know that well.
I was like that as a little girl. You're not going to touch me or my sister or my cousins ever again. And I stayed in that stance. And, that served me until it didn't. I'm a very good leader. I'm a good advocate. But when you're like this, you can't. And what I'm doing right now is opening my hands to receive.
I know.
And so what I'm going to say is, so after that talk, just like you, I had so many women come up to me and tell me, thank you for sharing your story. You've opened up space for me now to share mine. I've never shared this before. Thank you for, and I just appreciated them holding space for me. But I'd had what I call a vulnerability hangover
Yes.
for almost 3 days. I don't remember. People came up to me like, months later, years later, to say, yeah, I was there at that event. Remember, I spoke to you. I had no recollection of that. I was completely on autopilot. My mind and my body just shut down as that armor came back on. And my body had a visceral response to so much vulnerability. So, I did come out of that. And like you, I speak on stages, and now here I am sharing it publicly on my podcast. What would you say, like, do you support people because you're helping people to share their vulnerable story? Is there a formula? Is there any steps that you could guide someone through who's saying, yeah, I have a story, and I want to get on it and I want to share it because I know it's going to help other people?
What a beautiful question. Thank you for sharing your story, because I mean, again, that's not the first time I've heard a story like that at all. And we have so much more similarity between our stories than what we think. And this is what happens is I do believe we're more alike than different. Now, when I think it comes to sharing the story and in the story versus on the story, I actually have a couple of thoughts and that not everybody agrees with, but I'll just share from my point of view. People say you can't share from the wound, you have to share from the scar. I actually really don't love that quote. And the reason is because I know a lot of adult humans and people who have this incredibly hard scar that underneath of it is a nasty wound that's never been cleaned. It's never been like, so it can be a long time ago. But if it holds a part of you, it has a charge to you, your subconscious is holding on to it, your body is still in that story. It's not about, that's a big piece of it. So I kind of get a feeling for people, are they in the story? If you're in the story, then that means you're probably either living it right now. It has a lot of charge to you. there's almost this need to, like, you can hear the anger in the voice. You can hear the needing to prove that I was a victim, right? And it's a slippery slope there. I say this with so much love, but it's a very slippery slope to a victim mentality. And I know I lived in victim mentality forever. And so, but the challenge is, as victim mentality, if you speak from that space, that is what you will attract back. That you will attract more people who are angry, who have rage, who are like furious. And if you're not sure, go to any controversial post online. You'll see the kind of people it brings back in. So if you actually really want to share your story, I personally believe it's got to be from a space where you feel it doesn't have a charge, like it doesn't have you can speak it in a neutral sense. You can also speak from, and this one will trigger some people, but I do believe that we always have some semblance of control. Now, let me just explain this for a second. And that's just, that control might be in, like, we get to choose how we respond to it. I can't control what happened to me, but I do get to choose how I respond to it. I do get to choose how I share it. Like, that puts me back into a space of ownership and away from victim. And so with victim mindset, there's a lot of blame, right? A lot of blame, a lot of anger. And again, all normal emotions, very normal. But if you live there, it's the exact polar opposite of ownership. They can't, they're the opposite ends of the emotional spectrum. And so you can't live in blame and anger and want to own and share your story. They don't go together. Well, not in my world. That's like, and I've actually had people say, you're not there yet, in my opinion. And so that's a big piece, is recognizing, where are you in the story? Like, how are you seeing it? How do you see yourself in it? And how can you take back some kind of control in it? So that's a big piece of it. And then when it comes to being like on the story, what lessons could you share from it? How can you tap into the emotions more than the details? This is where I think a lot of people get it, I don't want to say wrong, but where like it's not going to serve you, is if, you saying in a sentence that what you experienced, that's enough. Me saying I'm a parent who dealt with teen substance abuse, that's enough. I don't have to tell you about all the horrific things that were part of it. That's in the story. It doesn't serve anyone for me to do that. Does that make sense? So even in my book and even when I speak from stage, I will speak about like what I felt as a parent in having to do and advocate for my kids, even if they didn't see it that way at the time, advocate for them, because that was what my role was. That's how I felt it. But people who know me are like, oh my God, you're barely sharing anything. And I'm like, I know, you don't have to share the details of the story. If you feel like you need to share the details of the story, it's a slippery slope to victim. And that's going to keep you stuck in that space. So it's really recognizing, what's the story? What's the lessons? Where am I in connection to it? How much charge does it have for me? Because if it's got a lot of charge, there's more healing to do there. There really is. I mean, the first time I spoke on stage, I'm sure you can relate to the very first time. Of course, I was in my perfectionist era. So I had the whole thing memorized, like 10 minutes, every single word.
Yep.
I mean, I look at it, I mean, I had to do that, but every single word was memorized until I forgot where I was on stage.
Yep.
And they turned around and they had a picture up of the boys. And I started bawling on stage. Now I'm the perfectionist who can't remember where she was. And I can see my kids. And I mean, what a failure I was. That's what my brain was doing. And I had to do that. Like, I had to be in that space. But that messy part of sharing connected me with so many people because it was real.
Right.
And so that's the piece of it, is like, you have to be able to see, where are you in the story? What are the lessons? How can you tap into the emotion? And I heard from the very beginning, many, many years ago, when I was trying to figure out how to share the story, is that you should be able to share it if the people you're speaking about are in the same room with you. And I know that that's hard, but you should be able to speak in integrity as if the people that are in your story are in the room. And you can't control how they take it. You can control how you share it, what your intention is. So my intention for sharing has always been at the highest value, to leave them in full integrity and to be able to share open and vulnerably about myself. Vulnerability is not about them. It's not about your grandfather. It's about you and it's about me. That's what it is. So hopefully that helps give some key points. Like those are questions to ask yourself before you are ready to openly share it. Because if you're not there yet and you're like, okay, Marsha said to release shame, I need to speak and use my voice, but I'm really, really angry over here, then you're going to be vulnerable with the wrong people. You're going to get more angry people to join you, and you're going to have a harder time kind of pulling yourself into sharing that story into a healthy, healed space, like the crabs in the bucket, right? They're going to keep pulling you back down because they love living there. You want to be in a space where you can speak and share, and it takes time to get there. It does take time to get there.
Yeah. Those are great points. Really beautiful. Some of them I've never considered before. And I was just at an event, a live event, and my mentor, Patty Aubrey, who was part of Chicken Soup for the Soul, that whole series, I had an epiphany where I had a limiting belief, and it's around my intelligence, and it has to do with struggling to learn the multiplication tables. And because it's like, when did you feel that shame? What's the first time you felt it? And going all the way back into the first time I felt it. And I can recall sitting at my kitchen table, and my father had made this cassette tape with the multiplication tables with his voice. I just started to hate him, like, oh my word, 2 times 2 is, and he'd leave a space 4. And I felt so like this sense of unnecessary urgency to try to be perfection, like to be right. And just all kinds of things. And so I shared that with her, and she gave me this really great advice. She said, Deb, don't try to jump too fast to the lessons.
Oh, I love that.
And so that, that perfectionist shows up even in the healing, where I want to make good and just not deal with the stuff that has shown up, and right away go, oh, it's fine. This is the lesson, and this is what I'm going to take away. And like, oh, there's little Miss, perfect, who's, got her shit together, who's, able to do that. And so it was just such great coaching, just that simple line. And I was like, yeah, let me just sit with this idea and sit with this understanding, this new knowledge, this new self-awareness, and then see where, it shows up elsewhere before it starts to put it in a box of lessons.
What great advice. Honestly, that's great advice. Not everything has to be shared. It doesn't all have to be shared. People think vulnerability means everything. And one of other Brene Brown's quotes is vulnerability needs boundaries. It does need boundaries. It doesn't all have to be shared, not even at all. And I love the piece about not rushing the lessons, because sometimes the lessons will come to you over time. And if you can continue to just be curious, right? Don't judge them. I feel like once you judge yourself for having them, you're feeding shame. Like you're right in line with feeding shame again. Whereas if you can get curious, you're opening up to what the possibility is. The other thing that's really interesting about what you just said is that like our subconscious mind holds everything. And so all limiting beliefs that will come up to the surface come from our subconscious mind, which is running 95% of who we are. Like 95% of our thoughts, our beliefs, everything. So we can be going really hard consciously to make something work, but this subconscious belief comes to the surface. And when you get curious and you figure out where that connection is, as you said, like that feeling of not being intelligent. Well, it's actually how old would you have been then?
8.
Yeah, it's your 8-year-old version who remembers sitting there and being told, right, that yeah. So when you get to the root of the subconscious belief, you can shift it really fast, like without even trying. I had a client that has had a book on her mind for 10 years. Okay, she's like, I've known her for a long time. I want to write this book. Little did I just find out that, last month, her and her partner of 20 years had split. And she was sharing with me how she had him editing it because he's smarter than her. And I'm like, oh, wow. When did you decide he was smarter than you? She's like, well, he's an engineer. And I'm like, and? Like, and what? Like, why did you decide he was smarter than you? And she's like, I don't know. He like ripped apart all of my chapters and he was very critical of my work. And I'm like, well, was he critical about other things? And she's like, well, yeah, we're not married anymore. Like, it was just. And so as we started to really look at it, I said, okay, but why did that stop you? Like, what was it about that? When did you first feel that feeling? She goes, oh, I was 8 years old and my teacher told me I wasn't smart enough to write. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, that's where that came from. And I'm like, yeah. And are you that 8-year-old girl anymore? And she's like, no. And we did a little bit of release. I'm not kidding. Within 3 weeks, that book is like 90% done.
Oh, so
Because the block is released, right? The
yeah.
block is released, and it was something that she was available to do. But all that time, she's thinking, I'm not smart enough to write a book. I'm not good enough to write a book. And it was really just a message she interpreted as a kid. So this is why I really feel, you can't outwork something. You can't outdream or out visualize something that you don't believe is possible for you.
Yeah.
That subconscious is ruling the show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can never outperform your own self-image.
No.
And Oprah and Jamie Kern Lima say that you don't get what you want, you get what you believe you're worthy of. And so as we wrap up today, I could just keep talking to you. This
I know.
dynamic, maybe we need a part 2 because this has just been amazing. I would love for you to leave the listener with something that you as a mom, as an entrepreneur, from mom to mom, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, what's something that you would just give to someone standing in front of you if she said, I need your help, what advice could you give me?
Okay, so first off, I believe that everything you desire is already available within you. That's the reason that you desire it. So if somebody said, I mean, how can you help me with this? I'm like, I can, and it's available within you already. And my job would be to help unlock it faster, but it is available within you, right? You're not missing anything. I want every parent to know, I'm going to say parent or entrepreneur, like you're not broken. You are almost always you're the block that is in the way, right? So it's like and I do think that it comes down to taking and making yourself a number one priority. I know that's easy for me to say because my kids are older. I have friends who have really young kids. But I do think there's actually something to it in the sense that when you make yourself a priority in some way, shape, or form, you learn to value yourself more. And if you learn to value yourself more, you learn to value your voice more, your needs more, your health more. And it's a great example to set for kids anyways. And then even if you take that into entrepreneurship, like learning this is again my opinion, self-leadership is everything. And how you lead yourself as a parent, how you lead yourself as an entrepreneur is going to dictate how everything can unfold. And so, as you lead yourself in your business, you are your business. I do believe you are your business. So how do you lead yourself health-wise, voice-wise, asking for help, receiving help, like all of those things? You can, again, learn all of the strategies. Like I can go hire the best people for funnels, the best people to do like all of the things. If I don't believe that is possible for me, it won't matter. So how can you lead yourself, see your blind spots, love on your blind spots? Please don't judge yourself and shame yourself because like then we're right back to where we started the episode. Love your blind spots, see them and recognize them and get better at catching them faster and then lead yourself every single day. And then the last thing I will say is that you can do an amazing job today of leading yourself. Like you can ask for help, you can get your water, you can sleep, you can do all the exercise, the journal, the mindset, all of it. And you can like nail it out of the park and tomorrow's a new day. It doesn't carry over. I'm just going to burst the bubble. It just doesn't carry over. It's a practice. That's why self-leadership is important every single day.
Oh, so good. So good. Marsha, this has just been such a joy. And where can people find out more about you if they want to hire you as a speaker, if they want to purchase your book, if they'd like to explore the NLP coaching with you? Where can they get a hold of you and your resources?
Well, you heard how long my name is. So everything I have is Marsha Van W. Right down on my website is Marsha Van W. And my Instagram is, I spend probably more of my time on Instagram than anywhere else. And you can reach me there. My podcast is called Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. We're 870 episodes deep right now. Yep. And I will be talking to you very soon. And so that you'll find me there. And books are on Amazon. So if you went to Google, and which is kind of fun now, and you just put my name, Marsha Van W, it just pops up all these things. I'm like, okay, yep, that's that. But that takes like that takes time and lots of content to be able to do that.
It does. It does. I'm impressed. That's amazing. Goals for me for sure. So, your book is called When She Stopped Asking Why, and navigating teen substance abuse. I'm going to conclude here with Brené Brown and the quote that you put in your book is, owning your story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. So, Marsha, thank you so much for being here. And for the listener, don't forget to dare to declare. Today, we've delved into the realm of manifesting giants, exploring the power of declaring our desires to the universe with unapologetic boldness. But before we bid adieu, I have a little something special to share with all of you dreamers out there. Introducing the Dare to Declare Vision Board magazine and online DIY Vision Board course, your ticket to manifesting greatness in style. Picture this: flipping through pages filled with inspiring images, empowering quotes, and step-by-step guides to help you create the vision board of your dreams. Whether you're yearning for that spacious condo with a view, or a love that sets your soul on fire, our magazine is here to guide you every step of the way. Dive deep into the art of manifesting with our exclusive online DIY vision board course. Led by manifesting expert, yes, yours truly, and seasoned dreamers. This course will teach you the ins and outs of creating a vision board that speaks to your heart and soul. So what are you waiting for? Join the ranks of the manifesting giants and dare to declare your wildest dreams to the universe. Head over to our website, debbisluice.com, and grab your copy of the Dare to Declare Vision Board magazine and enroll in our online DIY Vision Board course today. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to declare, because in the world of manifesting, the sky's the limit.